At Indie Booksource, you can shop by genre or by author, and you will be buying direct from the author's main purchase link. We offer hundreds of titles in formats that include ebooks, paperback, hardbound, and audiobook. Support an indie author. Visit indiebooksource.com today.
Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. How are you all doing this evening? If you remember, tonight is the big crossover event. We have Stephen Gies here with us, and we'll be bringing him on in a minute. And then after the show is ended, then we're going to hop on over to his place and be on his podcast. Oh, Marjorie Daring says,
Hey,
hello,
Marjorie.
Joan and Rob. John, I don't even know my own name,
And
Marjorie.
who is this,
I
John?
don't know. Hi, Marjorie.
Wait a minute.
Glad to see you here. Sorry about that. Anyway, later on in the show, I'm going to tell you how to come over to their show and call in. Joe Congel's on board. Hi.
Hey, Joe.
Rob and Joan. He says, hi, Joe. Good to see you.
Well, events coming up. Shall we talk about this weekend, the 25th through the 27th? Rochester Winter Parafest is on. Fundraiser for Veterans Outreach. Is anybody in the Rochester, New York area? Go to rochesterparafest.org for more information. It's going to be a good time for all, I think. Hello to Trish. Hello to Verwain.
Trish Pickens says hello, and Verwain Greenhouse says hello also. Hi, you guys.
April
Glad
6th
you could be here.
On our show. Excuse me. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yes.
April 6th. We're going to have the first one of 3 reveals, the Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles reveal, part 1. The first 3 authors of the Crime Chronicles are going to be on with their new books, C.W. Hawes, Caleb Pirtle, and Cindy Davis. All 3 of them will be on that night.
That'll be fun.
And each one has a book that'll be releasing each month. And then we'll go on to reveal number 2 later on.
B Week says
Like
greetings. Hello. We're glad to see you here, Beam. And James Ricard says hello, folks. Hello. And Caleb Pirtle says, glad to be here. Hi, Caleb. We're glad you guys are all here, too. So Beam is also on the show, the podcast. It's Stephen Gies and Beam Weeks. And Beam has asked us to talk about some paranormal things. And I was just telling Stephen before the show that we had something happen here in our house, which we'll talk about on the show. So come on over to the show and call us up.
Pretty bizarre.
I'll remind you all of that later. Joe Congel says, looking forward to tonight and to the Magnolia night. Yeah, that's really going to be fun. Don't you think so, Joe? I think it's going to be a really good show.
Well, without much ado, shall we bring in
give
Mr.
Stephen a chance to talk.
Stephen Gies.
Excuse me. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Joan. Hi, Rob.
Hello. How are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited to be on here and looking forward to the big crossover event.
Yeah, we've never tried this before. Have you done it before?
No, we haven't. No. We figured who better to try it with than Rob and Joan, right?
There you go.
You suggested it, and we thought, well, that sounds like fun. I'm excited to do it. And all of you that get tired of typing to ask your questions, you can call in and ask us.
Yeah, that's an upgrade.
It is an upgrade.
On our show, we monitor 2 things. We take phone calls from guests, and then we monitor Twitter. If someone puts #FreshingGroup in a tweet, then we read the tweet on air too, and they can ask questions or make comments that way.
So if you're more comfortable doing that instead of speaking on the air, then you can do that. You can just go to Twitter. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was going to go right off to your books here if your brand will ever come up. Here it comes. First, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and when you decided to get into writing full time, or, as more full time than you had been? Because I know you've been writing for years, like 30 years. Oh, Caleb Pirtle, excuse me. Caleb Pirtle says, Linda says hello too.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Linda. We're so glad that you're with us.
Hi, Linda.
Yeah, we love Caleb and Linda.
I guess a story I've never told before is when I was in college, I was doing a bachelor's degree at University of Michigan in psychology. And since I was at the University of Michigan, which is a great literary institution and has all the professors are, major writers and famous people and all that kind of stuff, I was taking as many classes in English as I could just because I wanted to. And the head of the English department approached me one day and offered to become my advisor, to do a major. And I said, man, that's great, except I'm not planning on doing English. I'm doing psychology. And he talked me into doing 2 bachelor's degrees at the same time.
Yeah.
And he gave me one of the best pieces of advice I ever have. He said, do the degree in English too, because there is nothing that you will do in life that being a better communicator won't help.
Absolutely.
And he was right. I mean, everything that I ever did after that, I went into public service while I was working on my master's degree and did some other things. And part of that process was that we had to do a lot of publicity. I was producing TV commercials and public service ads and things like that. And I got to where I enjoyed that the most. So I went and got a job at one of the biggest ad agencies in the world so I could do Fortune 100 client accounts, the kind where they write checks for millions of dollars instead of, local TV commercials and things like that. So I got into being a TV producer, and that was my main career. And on the side, I composed and produced music for television as well. That's how I got my way through college. Was in high school. I played in a professional band with a bunch of 40-year-olds and saved up a whole bunch of money, bought a new car and stuff like that. So I did not go into writing, as it were. I went into basically TV and music, and not a whole lot with graphics either, because I was never that good of an artist. So it's kind of ironic now that I designed most of our book covers for Fresh Group. But at one point I was just, had story ideas and started writing some things down and kind of, in fact, I was in 12th grade. I started writing a novel just as a lark, just to see if I could do it and have some fun with it. And one thing led to another. And next thing I knew, I had a book written, a novel, my first one called Dance of the Lights. And I shopped that around, got an agent, got a decent publishing contract. First books, they don't give you very much of an advance. Dance of the Lights, there it is. That's an old cover. That's book's over 20 years old, but I always liked that cover with the dancing lights.
Yeah,
we waited almost 20 years to make a book trailer for that because we couldn't figure out how to make the lights dance and form the words and stuff. we figured it out. So if you want to go to YouTube, the Fresh Ink Group channel, check out the Dance of the Lights book trailer because we had a lot of fun making that. We just made that about a month ago, something like that. So at any rate, I got the agent and played that game of, wait a minute, they didn't print any copies. Nobody can find my book, all that stuff that comes with the traditional publishing. So one thing led to another, and I wound up having to hire a woman in Texas to be my manager because there was a lot of contracts coming in, things going on. And frankly, I was working more than full time. And this was just my little side lark or whatever. Well, she did a good job. She did some shopping. She got me another agent, got a couple more contracts and whatnot. And then I got kind of fed up with the whole thing. And one day I got to talking to Beam Weeks and I said, why don't we just publish these ourselves? And formed Fresh Ink Group, which has been 27 years now. And 27 years ago, we were calling ourselves a hybrid publisher, indie publisher, where we would kind of like split the costs with the authors. We wanted them to have a little bit of skin in the game, even though we were kind of spending more than they were, really, for them to own the rights and do all that kind of stuff. That's a very popular model now in hybrid publishing. Although I still think our terms and, all our stuff's usually a little better than most of our competition, if not way better. So that's how that kind of happened. Well, once we got Fresh Ink Group going, then a couple of friends who were writers said, hey, can we get in? And the thing just started going and growing. And then by the time I retired from television and all that other stuff, I thought, okay, this would be a great little retirement project. Well, we've got 70 something authors and 200 and something titles now. So I don't feel very retired. I'm spending more time working on this than anything else. But then throughout it all, every now and then I would just write a book, and whenever I'd have one ready, then I didn't have to get an agent or talk to publishers. I knew who could publish it for me.
Well, it looks like you've got a request to play the piano already.
Joe Conchel says, will you tickle that ivory behind you for us?
Yeah, I would like to, but in November, I went up to Michigan to see the Farewell Genesis concert, which, by the way, shout out.
There we go.
And the day before the show, a clown who thought red means go plowed into me, totaled my car, and put 12 fractures in my 2 hands. Plus messed up my spine and some other stuff like that. So I've had a couple of hand surgeries, and I can't bend this thumb now. And I'm working on some problems. We're working on them.
You could play with your elbow.
Yeah. I can play, you know what I mean? I can play a pretty good song now, but I'm just limited in some things that I can do and stuff. So I'm working on it. So maybe next time you have me on, we'll do a song.
There you go.
Paul Hollis says, hi, everyone.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, Paul Hollis. But that's the story of my writing and Fresh Ink Group are pretty much the same story, because it was all about us doing things our ways. And now we're putting out a new book about every week or so,
That's
or 2
wonderful.
at most. We picked up 5 book contracts last night. And it's all word of mouth. It's people who like what we're doing and they want to be part of the group. So we're having fun. And then if I can sell a few of my books along the way, more power to me.
There you go.
Joe Conjul says, wow, sorry to hear.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
So you wear a lot of hats. Publisher, editor.
I do.
Musician, author.
In fact, I used to not wear hats until now I'm getting to where I go outside in the Alabama sun. I'm putting that cap on. It's like I'm fitting right into Alabama.
You betcha. Yeah. It has consequences if you don't. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It does indeed. Before we get into all of your books, let me put up some of the places people can reach.
Get his banner going too.
Reach you. First, we'll put up your banner along the
and
bottom
podcast host. We added that hat on there too.
Yeah. All right. So they can reach you at your website, StephenGees.com.
Yeah, that has a contact form right in it.
Okay, perfect.
Plus embedded in that website is my Stephen Gees blog as well.
Okay, so they can read the blog and get in touch with you there.
Yeah.
So it's Stephen Gees, StephenGeez, because starting later on tonight, it's going to be a podcast all over the place, and they won't say these things. Yeah. His website is geezwriter.com. Geez writer. You know how to do that.
Yeah, that's for experts in writing. I've got like maybe 8 or 10 other experts, people like Lizzie Chantry and Harmony Kent, whatever, who are on that site. And they give advice for writers, resources, links, some how-to kind of stuff. So that's what Geez Writer was just kind of a hub for writers to come find things, get information and whatnot. And we're looking to expand that a lot more.
That's awesome. And FreshInkGroup.com. That's FreshInkGroup. And of course, that has to do with your publishing house, right?
Yeah. All of our authors are on there. Everything's on that site. That's a huge site. So if you go there and you hit members or look, you can find any of my books, or you can look at Stephen Gees. I've got my own pages in there. We're very interactive in that with our authors. They put their videos in and their social media and do all kinds of stuff too. And of course, there's contact forms in all of these things that you've named. We try to be accessible.
And then there's Facebook, Gary Stephen .Gees.5, and Gary is Gary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Facebook wants you to use your real first name, even though that my author name is Stephen Gees.
Yeah,
my middle name.
And Facebook, Fresh Ink Group.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your Twitter at Stephen Gees.
Mm-hmm.
And also another Twitter at Gees Writer.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of those. At Fresh Ink Group is a very popular one too.
That's another Twitter that you can reach them on.
Yeah.
And there is an email, info@freshinkgroup.com, which I imagine if you want to get involved with the publishing thing or talk to you about publishing a book, that would be the place to go. That email?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They'll give you info.
There. Those are all the places that you can reach in. Now, let's do some of your books. We'll
Ooh.
start with your latest one. Here it is. Comes This Time to Float. And for those of you who are not watching us live, it's Stephen floating on his back, and the water looks like it's made out of
Electricity. A
and-
rainbow of electricity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Taking you off through the valleys into the distance.
There you go. There you go.
So it is.
Comes This Time to Float is kind of it's the name of one of the short stories in the book, but it's kind of I'm old and broke down now, but back in the day I was a hardcore scuba diver, whitewater rafter, whitewater canoeist, canoe racer, stuff like that. And there's a whole lot of times that you wind up in the water and you don't fight it. It's time to float. You know, you put your feet downstream, you get your butt down, you get your hands ready to push off things, and you go. And sometimes that's the way life is. I mean, you're trying to wade across that river. Sometimes the current's going to be a little too strong. Next thing you know, comes this time to float.
As
So,
the
I guess-
verbs say, resistance is futile.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's
I am an old scuba diver myself, so I
No,
hear you.
now you're a young scuba diver who used to scuba dive.
Yeah.
But the story, the book itself, it's 19 short stories, and people who are familiar with my writing, and I know there's at least a half a dozen of them out there, know that every time I write something new, I try to do it very different than the last time. I write in a different genre. I might be first person present tense on this book. The next book, I might be, completely different. I use different writing styles, different voices. One of my favorite things to do is to write it so differently that people aren't sure it was me at first when they start reading it. So this collection of short stories were written over a couple of decades, and they reflect exactly that. There's a couple of high fantasy stories. There's some straight up literary. There's some suspense and some thrillers. And there's a lot of them that basically just try to say something about who we are, how we live, things like that too. Some of them are metaphors. Some are more straightforward. Some of them you have to think about a little bit. But it was fun putting that collection together, trying to figure out what order to put them in, which ones to put in, which ones to leave out. And I wound up starting each one with a paragraph telling the story behind the story, just so you know what the context of when I wrote this or why I wrote this was.
That's always helpful.
Yeah.
Let me get a little quick plug in here too. In that book, two of the stories, one's called Bus, Boy, and one's called Sidekick. Both of those stories I made sound effects and music augmented audio shorts of, and they're in the Fresh Ink Group channel on YouTube. So if you go over there, you can check out me reading a couple of the stories out of that book before you go invest in the book. See if you like the stories.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And with sound effects, it's really
It
awesome.
makes it fun.
Yeah. That's how we're doing all of our audio books now for our authors. And they like that.
I love that.
Yeah. It
I
brings
think
it
that's
alive. Makes it feel kind of real. The music and the bumpers and stuff just gives it a feel and an attitude. Although on the other hand, one series that we do is the Mac McDowell Mission series for Robert G. Williscroft and their submarine books. And you've got to get all the correct submarine sounds in there. And the submarines have a million sounds. So we do have a lot of fun. Wait a minute. What kind of intercom was that? What's the beep? Is it the radar? Which radar was it? So audiobooks are a lot of fun now.
I like that style also because it's like old time radio,
Yeah.
which actually I did grow up on.
Yeah.
I'm pre-TV, guys. Joe Conjal has a question. Are you a pantser or do you plot out everything?
Joe,
Pantser or planner?
I am a hardcore outliner. I am
All
not a
right.
pantser. I am an
Linda
organizer.
is happy to hear this.
Yes.
You got to remember, my career was, the kind where people would sit in a meeting big muckety mucks or whatever, and somebody would agree to a budget of $700,000, and then you got to get together a team of 100 people and put all this together. You have to be meticulously organized. You got to have outlines, scripts, rundowns for the live shoots, all that kind of stuff, and a team of people working on those. My attitude about writing a story is I want to know where I'm going with it. I want to organize it, get it all out there, put in all the main details, and do it in a way so that when I'm thinking in chapter 23, wait a minute, I could do this a little bit differently. Then I can go back in my outline in chapter 17, 14, and 9 and set that up so that when I get to chapter 23, I know what I got to do in that chapter. Now, when I'm outlining like that, I keep working it until I pretty much know all of the important things that have to happen in every scene. Then I kind of become a pantser, because when you're writing it, you're feeling it, you're trying to get the inspiration, you're having fun, you're playing with the wording, and you're doing all that kind of stuff that, frankly, I think the fact that I've got an organized outline frees me up to do. You know, I'm not worrying about, wait a minute, oh, I forgot to put the gun in the drawer, you know, that he's getting ready to reach for. Oh, I got to go back and put that in the drawer in another scene or whatever. It was in my outline. That gun's in that drawer. I know about it. So that's when it's a lot of fun. That's when a scene might turn into 2 scenes or 3 scenes, or 2 scenes might get combined, or some new fun details would get added or whatever. But for the most part, Joe, hardcore outliner, and I'm an advocate of it. And if you go over to Amazon, you'll find a book called G's Writer How To, written by me, outlining. And it tells people different ways to do it, gives them some pointers, explanations, and basically kind of gets them to understand it's not about limiting yourself. It's about reducing all the concepts in your story to little blocks that you can put down so that you can rearrange them easily, you know, develop them, add to them or whatever. I mean, you know, in your outline, it could be, you know, confront about affair. And you've got a 2-page scene worked out in your mind, but your outline, you just need confront about affair, just because you know what that means. So, yeah, hardcore outliner. And I'm glad somebody asked that, because I like to preach that sermon.
Now, Marjorie Deering says you're a real innovator.
Oh, well, thank you, Marjorie.
And Caleb Pirtle says, I was glad to hear Stephen mention Alabama. I was wondering how a boy with a Michigan education could write Southern Gothic.
Yeah, you know, my family was all like Tennessee and Alabama. My mother was born in Alabama, and most of my people were Tennessee. And back in the 50s, there was a mass migration to the Detroit area for the auto jobs. So a lot of my relatives wound up in Michigan, and that's how my parents wound up there. So I was born in Detroit, grew up in the Detroit suburbs, you know, got all my degrees from the University of Michigan and lived there most of my life. But the only family I have left right now is my 85-year-old father, and he lives down here in Alabama, and he goes out fishing every day, which is something I like to do. I mean, we live literally on the lake with a boathouse. So you walk down there, press the button, the door opens, the boat lowers down, and you go fishing. So I figured, okay, I can do what I'm doing from anywhere. Let's move to Alabama and spend some time with my father while I can. So even though I'm from Michigan, grew up in Michigan, and kind of a Detroiter at heart, or an Ann Arborite at heart, it still comes down to, as a kid, we traveled to Tennessee. I knew my relatives. I knew my family. I saw how they lived. I heard how they talked. We made fun of how they talked. That dog went a running, you know, and things like that.
Joe Conjal said, thank you. I appreciate your answer on that.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Trish Pipkin says,
Ooh.
Oh, go Spartans.
Well, you know, I mean, if you want to poke me with Ohio State.
Yeah.
My attitude has always been, first of all, University of Michigan, but Big Ten. You know, you want the Big Ten to win, not the SEC or the Pac-12 or whatever when they're having their big games. So I root for Michigan State. In fact, I've heard people disparage that school, and I've always said, no, most of my friends who couldn't get into Michigan went to Michigan State. It's a good school.
Oh, burn.
Now, keep in mind on our crossover, when we're over on the Voice of Indy podcast, my co-host Beam Weeks is a Michigan State Spartan fan.
Well,
there you go.
We know that because we live near where he is
That's
from.
right.
So
That's
we didn't tell you that, Trish, but Beam is from Porterville.
Porterville, yeah.
Trish Pipkin says,
Potterville?
haha, true. Potterville, yeah. And Joe Conjal says, ACC country here.
And NASCAR.
Now you've NASCAR especially. Now you've started it. And now we'll never get past it. Let me go on to some other. We have like a jillion books here.
Let's do one, and then let's.
We're gonna have to go.
Do our explanation about the
all right
crossover.
I'll give you another book, and then we're gonna have to do the explanation of the crossover, and then we're gonna have to throw in a few commercials.
Okay.
Been there, noted that.
In there, noted that. The first two books that you showed are my two collections of shorts. Mm-hmm. This one is nonfiction. These are personal experience essays. I call it observations, inspiration, remembrance, and noteworthies to share. And what these are is, I always call them personal experience essays. They're like mini memoirs or whatever. Each one tells a little story about maybe a person I knew, something that happened growing up, an experience I had traveling the world. One could be like a memorial to somebody that we've lost. They're just a whole lot of some of them are funny, some of them are poignant, some of them are sad and heartbreaking. But I always try to find some meaning in all of them. So, I'll tell the little story, this happened, and here's what we learned from it, or something like that, too. 54 essays in that book. That's a fairly thick book, a lot of stuff in it. And that's a popular one for gifts. So I hear from a lot of people saying that, I was reading it, and this essay made me think of my mom, so I gave it to her for her birthday or whatever. But
now, here we have Voice of Indie podcast, and this is the show that we'll be on. And also, we're going to give you the address to go to. Okay, Voice of Indie podcast, 2 ways to make comments, questions. Voice, call 516-453-9902. That's live on the show. Or if you don't want to be live on the show and hear your own voice over the computer, you can post a tweet with comment or question, and we'll cover it on air as long as they have hashtag Fresh Ink Group somewhere in the tweet.
No, it's difficult to write down all the, when you're watching, to write down that great big long address there to get to. If you go to Blog Talk Radio, search under arts or art, the art section, you'll find Voice of Indie.
It's right there.
Right.
Read it.
Right, exactly. And you'll find it there. And that's probably the easiest way if you haven't been able to write down the address there that we put on.
Now, in future shows, if you subscribe to our newsletter, which freshinkgroup.com homepage has a subscription form on it, we put out a newsletter every Wednesday morning. And one of the top things on it is tonight's podcast, who the guest is, sample of their work, and the link to the show. So if they want to watch future Voice of Indie shows, that's too late for tonight, but in the future, they can just subscribe to that newsletter, and we'll send them the link every week.
Right.
Now, Verwayne was showing us this on a banner, but surprise, Verwayne, we already have it here on a ticker for everyone. Cross over to Voice of Indie podcast. So it has the whole address. It's scrolling along the bottom.
Too bad you can't just click on the screen.
I know.
Oh, well.
Yeah, you can't.
But anyway, follow us over there when we go.
Just take a screen. They can always take a screenshot.
Yeah,
there you go.
There the info is. Just pop over there to your screenshot.
There you go.
That's getting a habit I've been getting into more and more lately. I don't want to write that down. If I need it, I know where it is.
If you're going to take a screenshot, we should do this one. That for Wayne. There. Wayne posted it, so it's actually on a banner. Sure. That'll make an easier screenshot than trying to catch that as it goes tickering across the stage there.
Yeah, now I've gone to Blog Talk Radio and just search Voice of Indie in the search bar and not had any trouble finding it.
That's Perfect. What we said at the beginning.
We did have to put a 1 after a Voice of Indie 1. I think somebody else had Voice of Indie.
Yeah. A lot of us indies have voices, I guess, or want to be heard. Yeah. And so I was saying earlier in the show, and if you hadn't tuned in quite then, let me repeat it, that Beam had asked us to tell some paranormal stories when we were there. And we're happy to do that. As we had a team meeting the other night, we told them that we were going to do that. And they laughed and they said, do we have stories? It's our favorite thing is to tell our paranormal stories. But in the meanwhile, something happened here at our own house. And we'll be telling that story because you guys won't believe it. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
There
Yeah,
you
well, if someone else told me this, I'd be like, I don't know.
go. So stick around. We're going to take a couple minutes to do some commercials, and we'll be right back.
right
And we'll do a
back.
book giveaway and
Yeah.
talk about all your as many books as we can get in.
I know
Because
it's going to be hard.
you got a bunch of them. So hang loose, everybody.
Dear Lord, she's still alive.
Who's still alive?
Maris, that's who.
Come on, Angie, that's impossible.
Impossible or not, she's still alive, I tell you. She killed that boatload of people, and she's just getting started. There's no limit to what she will do.
It's not easy to kill a siren. It takes a formula and a plan. Siren Song 2 is the spellbinding sequel to Siren Song. Both novels by George Dismukes.
Siren Song 2 will be on bookshelves and bookseller websites in July. Don't miss it.
People Who Like to Read Want to Get Their Hands on Books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book one of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
We're back.
I like those. Those are some very nice trailers. Very impressive.
Thank you.
And I think the last two had that voice audio track too. That'll translate well into your archives when people are listening to the show later.
That's right.
Yeah.
We pretty much do all of our trailers like that now with a voiceover because there's so many other ways that you wind up using them.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We do too. So here we've got your next book Fantasy Patch.
Fantasy Patch. I had a lot of fun writing this one. I mentioned earlier that I, spent a number of years working for the big ad agency, wearing the expensive suits and going to the meetings and, all that kind of stuff in order to get people to write me checks so I could have fun making things. This story here is about a guy who does that. It's kind of, it's not autobiographical, but it's based on my experiences in a lot of ways. And the two main characters, Dante, who's the creative director at an agency, and then his guy who does all the business dealings, Frank, actually both of them are me. It's kind of like part of me is one character and part of me is in another character. Plus, then they're not me. You add more stuff to it and you wind up changing who they are. But it's the story of Dante is a creative director, and he gets an account to launch a new pharmaceutical patch called the Fantasy Patch. And I wrote this thing. 15 years ago, something like that. I had a contract with the Prozac killer to write his story and did a lot of research and stuff like that. And then his wife got cancer and she was being harassed in the community, and he backed out. He didn't want to do the book. So I wrote a novel instead. And in this fantasy patch is supposed to, do psychotropic things that help you align your thinking and be more successful and whatnot. And it's actually a dangerous thing. And, we have since seen how pharmaceutical companies can really hype something that is actually more dangerous than they're acting like it is. Sometimes things are good for some people, but not for everybody. So my guy Dante decides he's going to bring down a major pharmaceutical company for the shenanigans that they're doing and the stuff that they're pulling. And it gets ugly. It turns into a thriller, and, people get killed and stuff's happening. And, it's one of those, but it's kind of a funny book. It's humorous. He's always tongue in cheek. He's always observing things. He's the guy with the imagination. And it's the only novel I ever wrote in the first person, and the only novel I ever wrote in the present tense. So he's telling it as he's thinking it, which gets you that kind of stream of consciousness stuff.
It sounds pretty cool.
They'll be arguing back and forth and all this kind of stuff's happening. And they all turn to him, Dante, what do you think? And it's like, man, I just like to draw, I'm just having fun drawing it over here. So it's a thriller. It's a thriller. And, by the end of the book, we learn that what everybody thought turned out not to be was the truth, So
that sounds really awesome. Let's take a minute to get your book giveaway going. First 5 people to email info@freshinkgroup.com will win an ebook, or in the US only, a print copy of choice.
Okay.
Of any of my books.
Yeah.
Of any of the books.
Choice of any.
Right.
So get your fingers typing and get those emails out there. Okay. Now
we'll leave that ticker going so that if you want to head on over there and start typing away now, you can do that. Okay, so
and your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite, Invigilator.
And that's not to say the first 6 or 7 people might not get a book,
Right.
Depends on how many people write in. Invigilator, yeah, the root in that word is vigil, and invigilator is a person who keeps watch, over things. This book has a strange germination to it. I had a friend who kind of went militia. I don't know if that tells you a lot, but kind of underground, doomsday prepping, all of that kind of stuff. And he got into the black helicopters and the cow mutilations and, all of those kinds of things that are a lot of the lore among those groups. And I started reading up and doing some research or whatever and decided, well, I'd write a sci-fi thriller where the main character is a teenager who is being protected by an underground militia in Tennessee. So it's kind of like, you got the FBI, you got the militia, and then maybe aliens, who knows? But again, it's a thriller. It's a very complicated, complex thriller. Nothing's really what you think it is. Things fit together, stuff happens, and you know how thrillers work. But that one's straight up alien invasion sci-fi kind of stuff. I grew up reading science fiction. I was a Robert A. Heinlein fan, and Asimov and Clarke and Sturgeon and a lot of those guys. So every now and then I just get it in me and got to write something sci-fi.
There you go.
Author
Hi,
George Dismuke says, hello, everybody.
Glad you could make it.
George.
Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Hi, George.
So.
Like the trailers.
So Trish Pipkins, who has commented a couple of times, is our daughter, one of our daughters. And she was due on Christmas Day. That was her due date to be born. And I held off until January 2nd just so she could be born on Isaac Asimov's birthday.
Ooh.
Yeah. We love sci-fi.
Yeah. Yeah, if you love sci-fi, you should check out our author, Robert G. Willis Croft. He's like the next stage of Heinlein. He's very good. Great characters, great stories, far-reaching. Plus, he does a different series, the Mac McDowell Missions, which is Cold War submarine thrillers, because he was in the U.S. Navy and served on submarines, and he knows that world too. But his sci-fi is excellent. I highly recommend it.
George says, just checking in for a moment, not doing too well. I'm really sorry to hear that,
Sorry,
George. Your back is just not getting any better.
No.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Boy, I'm sympathetic to backs.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything if your back's not cooperating, right?
Yep.
Okay. What's the
All right,
next
let's
one
go
here?
on to
Short
short
showcase?
story showcase number 1. This is an undersea cover. I like that. That's really pretty cool.
Yeah, our logo for Freshing Group is the blue octopus.
Yeah.
And that's a glass case underwater with octopus, and there's a crab, and there's fish, and they're all coming to read the stories.
That's nice.
Yeah, cool.
Our staff artist did that, Anik. So we had fun with that. That's it's got probably, I think, maybe 3 stories by me in it. But that one, we just held a contest and just solicited short stories over the course of about a year.
That's
and
good.
narrowed it down from about 1,400 entries to the 58 or something like that. I think 60, I think, in that book that we liked the best.
Wow.
A lot of them were first-time authors, had never had anything published. A few of them were teenagers. And then some of them were seasoned authors who had a bunch of books. But
I bet that encouraged
them.
them.
Story out there. So
I bet that
that's
really
what that
encouraged-
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now, Lauren, who's on our staff, is collecting stories for the 2nd installment in that series. So anybody with a short fiction, send it along. We have a contest tab right at the freshinggroup.com website. We're also looking for short essays, like in that Been There Noted that book too.
There we go.
Is everyone listening? If you could just repeat that, Stephen, to make sure that they were paying attention, what you just said about people getting in touch with you.
Freshinggroup.com, our main website, there's a tab called contests. And if you go to that tab, there's a submission form, the information, all that right there. So, and right now it says that we're looking for short fiction and we're looking for short personal essays.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
those of you, I know some of you listening would really like to do that or should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a good way to get a small amount of your work out there and start to build your audience, especially if you're new.
it's a
Right.
good jumping off place.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
and you know, you can link them at Amazon too, and get them so that if people search for the author, they'll come up in whatever anthologies they're in too.
That's true.
Yep.
George says he ate some tainted gumbo and he'll see us next week. Love to everyone. Okay, George, go and be well.
Oh, betrayed by the gumbo.
Yeah.
I love a good gumbo.
An Ann Arbor boy who loves gumbo.
Well, I traveled a lot way back in the day. I was somewhere else in the country almost every week. So I had favorite restaurants in every city. And New Orleans is a great place to eat.
Oh my gosh. Isn't
Great
that
place
the
to eat.
truth?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been jonesing to go there for like the last 2 years. When I really got the itch was in the middle of COVID lockdown. I'm like,
Yeah.
probably not the best place for me to go at this point, but now I really want to go back. Papala Skies.
Ooh, Papala Skies. I enjoyed this book. This is a story of the first half of the book jumps back and forth. The character is Rochelle. And in alternating chapters, she's 13 and then she's graduating from college. Then the 3rd chapter, she's 14 and then going back to after she gets out of college. So for the first half of the book, we see stories of her life growing up, which are going to make the difference in the second half of the book, which picks up and is just from there on. And basically it's the story of at the age of 13, she feels that she was the one responsible for getting her mother killed. And she's a 13-year-old girl who has a hard time dealing with that. It was just her and her mom because their parents were divorced. Her father lived in Hawaii and had his own new wife and new family. And all of a sudden, this 13-year-old girl was orphaned and blaming herself. And she got plucked out of Chicago and dropped down into rural Big Island, Hawaii, with pidgin-speaking local boys who basically hate haoles, white people. I don't know if hate's the right word for it, but, treat them askance, as it were, as outsiders. And, they're very, very tight culturally on the Big Island like that. So she has to deal with the fact of how is she going to live her life? What's she going to do with this new family? And how is she going to come to terms with or solve the mystery of what really happened with her mother? And like most of my stories, it gets complicated and lots of people are involved and there's, things that kind of mislead you and take you off in another direction. But it's a very heartfelt story. And the thing about writing this was I did it very much in her point of view for description, because she has this imagination. She can't get on the train in Boston and head over to Cambridge without looking out the window and imagining the French countryside while she's on a train, visiting the village where her mother was born, and things like that. So she's always imagining. She's on Hawaii. She'll step out of the house at night and she'll see the cliffs and the water, and she'll see the faces in the cliffs, you know, and she'll look up and the sky will be Adler Planetarium, where she grew up in Chicago, and stuff like that. So if you're one of those people that just give me the plot, give me the plot, give me the plot, that's probably not your kind of book, because part of the plot is her imagination. How does she see and interpret all the stuff happening around her? And if you're paying attention, you'll see that matures over the course of the book too. So it's one of the plot threads that goes through it. And that's probably the most fun that I had, writing directly in a female point of view character and really trying to be in that head for a while.
Cool.
I was never pushed to the point of wanting to dress that way, but you know.
That's a good thing.
Chanel Fletcher says hello. And Chanel, just for you, I want to put this up again because
it's already up. Book giveaway.
Oh yeah. Okay. It is up. This is the book giveaway. So Chanel, the first 5 people, and actually he said the first 6, 7, whatever, email info@freshinkgroup.com will win an ebook. Or if you live in the United States, you can get a print copy of choice that's signed. And you need to go to, let me see, his website. The best website for you to go to would be this one, StephenGees.com. So to look at all of his books. Plus, we're going through some of them now. But I know Chanel loves to enter the contests.
I see 2 have entered already: Joe Congle and Verwain Greenhoe.
One thing I forgot to mention for you folks that are watching on LinkedIn, you're not seeing any comments. You can comment. We will see it, and we will bring up your comments. Put your name on there too. Your first name's fine, just so we can acknowledge. But we'll see the ones from LinkedIn, but you won't be able to see them. Okay, that's that.
Yeah, and also, you know, we are being broadcast on 3 Facebook sites, 1 LinkedIn, and 2 YouTubes. And so whichever site that you're watching us on, you're only going to see the comments of those people on that site. So when I put up comments and you're like, I didn't see that, that's why, because they're on a different
we should
site
bring them all
than
together,
you
but
are.
it doesn't work that way.
Yes, right.
Okay. What else we got?
So that book sounds really good to me, though, actually, because I'm from Boston,
we only
traveled
have
on the
about
cave.
10 minutes here.
Oh, we only have 10 minutes. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Here's one dialogue. How to. Oh, yes. So you touched on this a little bit before when you were talking about this one.
There's
how
5 of
to
them.
outlining.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, which you gave a very, very good description of that, of why you do that and how you do that. G's Writer How to Dialogue. Then we have G's How to Indie Publishing. G's How to Narrative. G's How to Outlining. And he almost had me convinced, except I know what my personality is like. And I'm just not that precise in all of my things that I do. And G's Writer How to Point of View. Those all sound really, really good.
Yeah, I'd like to especially plug the point of view one. That's the most popular one. That's a hot topic for a lot of people.
I think
and
so.
I'll tell you, there's a million blog entries and things like that out there on it, and they're usually very simple, very basic. Don't head hop, those kinds of things. That point of view is more advanced. It's serious. I mean, you start out learning, you know, some of the basics and stuff, and then we talk about innovative ideas, tricks, techniques, and I introduce concepts like the announcing point of view unnecessarily. You know, like saying she went over and looked out the window and saw a bird on the branch. But if you're in her point of view and you say there was a bird on the branch outside the window, she must have looked out there and seen it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of those kinds of things that people don't pay attention to. But I see manuscripts that are like, wow, if I took out all the unnecessary point of view reminders, this is half a page that's left. So there's a lot of stuff like that in there, and good examples of here's a paragraph, here's how we edit it to do those things. And I get great feedback on that one in particular. People say that's really helpful.
Verwain says he'll be calling in on the Voice of Indie show. Great. He was a paramedic, and boy, do I have some real ghost stories. And he also says, I bought every one of those G's how-to books worth every dime.
Oh, they're only a
Thank you,
dime.
Verwain.
Worth every dime.
Oh.
And Beam says the G's how-to books are excellent teaching tools for writers of all sorts. They do sound great. And Paul Hollis says, excellent how-to book series.
Well, that's
Oh, thank you, Paul.
So
Yeah,
there's a
you know,
whole
I've
lot
got
of-
like 15 more of those that aren't published yet. I just need to get some time to get around to putting them out there.
Gain some time, yeah.
I will say this, that in the past I belonged to a club, and every year they talked me into making some how-to videos for the club.
Mhm.
And next week's podcast we're going to have a guest, but then the next day is when I'm having surgery, so I can't talk for 2 weeks. So the week after that, we're going to play on our podcast 2 of those how-to. They're videos, but we turned them into audio tracks. So they're 2 how-tos on creating characters and then how to create dialogue for those characters. And those are part of that series, but they're in video form. So that's probably the only chance you'll have to actually hear those if you tune into that podcast in 2 weeks.
I'm
Okay.
sorry you won't be able to talk.
Now you do have, we only have about 5 minutes or so, something like that. You've got a couple of books there that we didn't get the covers for that you're holding on to.
wanted to
You want
hold
to
up?
talk about?
I think we're probably missing at least a half a dozen, but 2 that I just grabbed off the shelf were, since we were talking about sci-fi, I've got one called Jasu Pure, another
Okay.
original painting by our digital artist who's on staff here, Anik. He does some beautiful work.
That's good to hear.
This is a otherworld science fiction story about 2 families. One's alien, one's human, and they have to deal with prejudice, you know, because the aliens come from a planet where if you aren't right, you get killed, you know. So, and there's some kid point of views in this, which I like. This is a good book for younger readers as well. This one here, this is the book I'm most proud of. What Sarah Saw. That's the Golden Gate Bridge there.
Looks
A little
like
piece
it.
of artwork on the easel. This is by far my most literary. This is the one where, hey, I've got a degree in literature. Let's see what I can show off. And it's full of metaphors and layers and double meanings and triple meanings. And I try to get some big questions answered. But, you know, the first line in the book is the boy looked back. And it's this guy sees a sketch in an art gallery that he thinks is him when he was a kid. And that hooks him up with the young Korean-American woman who owns the art gallery. And they go on an odyssey of self-discovery where lots of things get revealed and have to be dealt with and challenged or whatever. And it's going to come down to the 2 of them need to find their way past some serious difficulties in order to find happiness. And in the process, they try to answer, what is the power of art? And if that's not a big question to tackle in a novel, I don't know what is. But I tried to tackle it in this one, and I think I got some poignant stuff in there.
Cool.
But it's very literary. It's big words, big sentences. It's not something I'd recommend for 12-year-olds yet, unless you're that kind of a reader. But again, I'm most proud of that. That's my literary novel.
Awesome. Joe says he loves your covers.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Yeah, we it's good having some good artists and, you know, basically having fun with them.
And I did want to say again, really quickly before we leave, the first 5 people to email info@freshinkgroup.com will win an ebook. And if you live in the United States, you may win a print copy of choice signed by the author. And so that's always fun to have.
We're up to 4.
Yeah, I could hear them coming in.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ring.
Yep, we're up to 4. And I mean, you know, if 12 come in, I'm
Come
in the
on,
right
guys.
I'm
come
in the
on.
right I'm in the right mood. You know, it's anybody that says I'd like to see your book, you know, it's not about making $1. It's about finding an audience, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And yes, if you want to tackle What Sarah Saw, that would be a fun book to ask for. And if you want to see a point of view or know how to be an outliner instead of a pantser,
There you go.
you could buy the how-to outline, because if you weren't tuned into the earlier part of the show, Stephen gave a really good reason for why you should outline.
You did. You
I
did.
mean, it was very convincing.
Almost got us.
Almost got even me. Who is definitely a fly by the seat of her pants in her whole life kind of girl.
So, Stephen, it has been wonderful having you with us.
Thank you.
Amazing. This is quite a resource for people. I highly recommend going to your websites and just checking it all out.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I recommend that you come over and listen to his show, because we're going to be on it, and we're going to be telling paranormal stories about stuff that you haven't heard before, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You'll actually hear about our books, and instead of hearing us talk all the time, you can talk at us and ask us questions.
There you go.
That'll be fun.
Wayne said, "Thank you, Rob and Joan. I enjoyed the show." I'm very glad that you did. For
Glad you
Wayne, you
joined us.
can join in again another day. Oh, this Saturday. Nope, I won't do that now. We'll do it at the end of the show. Paul Hollis says, "Another awesome show. Thanks, Stephen, Joan, and Rob." And Joe Conjal says, "Super podcast. Very interesting."
Thank you, Joe.
Great. Glad you
So
liked
we're
it,
going to move
Joe.
you over to the side.
Actually, if you want to, you can just say,
Yeah, if you need to
"Peace
go
out."
get into your other
Go get into your
thing,
show.
you're
and
welcome to.
we'll-
I'll hang around. I'm already all
Okay.
logged in and ready to go. I just need to click,
All
click,
right.
click, and I'm
That's
there.
good.
Oh, that's fabulous. We have another 4 minutes or so.
Want to
3 minutes.
give everybody a reminder. Episode Rewind this Saturday, every Saturday at 5:30 p.m. right here where you're watching right now. You can see it. We're rerunning all of the old episodes in order. This will be episode 17. Jim Bauk, Bob Long, and Lisa O'Hara, and they talk about their UFOs and alien abduction.
Well, we should say they both have longtime workers at
MUFON. Yeah, both are MUFON.
Jim has been a field director in New York State and has worked for MUFON for the last 50 years. Bob Long has always investigated abductees, and he talks about that. He's now a freelancer, and you don't want to miss that show. That was an amazing show for those of you that tuned in the first time. So let's see. Chanel had said, "Great guest, so much fun." He is a great guest. You're right, Chanel. And Trish Pipkin said, "Fun show."
Thank you, Chanel.
Okay, and then next Wednesday, right here, same place, Brakefield and Berkey are going to be on, and they are really amazing authors. And
Yes, they
that'll
are.
be a lot of fun
They
too,
are.
because they're a lot of fun.
And Joe Conjal said that was a great show too. The one with Bob and Jim, it was.
Joe's got a book coming. Joe has a book coming.
All right.
He was the first one to write in.
He's pretty fast on the draw.
Yeah, he is. That's great.
All
That's
right.
really fabulous.
So
Oh my gosh.
everybody hop over to Voice of Indie podcast
Yes.
on Blog Talk
Get
Radio.
ready to call in
And
or go to
we'll
Twitter.
we'll
There's-
see you then.
We're about 2 minutes from that starting to roll.
Okay.
All right. Joe Conjal says, "Yay,
Yay.
he won a book."
All right. So here we go. Where are we going here? Here we go.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.